by the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. Welcome to the show, Brigitte. Could you please pronounce your name for me?
Okay, hi, and thanks for having me on the show. It's Birgitta Jónsdóttir.
Okay, perfect. So tell us about the movement. What is the movement?
Well, it was like around the collapse in 2008. A lot of grassroots movements started to pop up everywhere where people wanted to find a sustainable solution in dealing with the crisis because we felt that the members of parliament were not capable and all the different institutes that were supposed to help us avoid this sort of crash.
Okay, now, it's obvious that the bankers in London are trying to put you, and also in the Netherlands, are trying to put your population into debt slavery. A few days ago, you released, quote, a call to the people of the world to support Iceland against the financial blackmail of the British and the Dutch governments and the IMF. Tell us about this particular aspect of your campaign.
Well, I think that this is not only an Icelandic problem, that the bankers are always favored when it comes to government decisions, and we feel that this is a bailout. And like the people in the United States and the people in the UK, they have all had to fork out their tax money for the bankers, for private debt. So I just wanted to find the common ground with the peoples of the world, that it is really time that we stop having our money used to bail out bankers.
Well, as an American, I must say thank you very much for showing some spine. I only wish my countrymen back in the United States would stage an insurrection against the bankers on Wall Street. I don't know what they're waiting for, but clearly everyone is interested in escaping the tyranny of the fraudsters and the banksters. Should take note of what's going on in Iceland and join the movement, as you call it. Now, the so-called international finance community are calling Iceland, quote, economic pariahs. Of course. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that they should just speak for themselves. And I think what we really don't think that it is fair that private debt is pushed on the nation. And also we feel that it is really strange, even though I am aware of the history of the IMF, how they've been used to blackmail nations, that the IMF is used as, a debt collector or a bully to get us to pay debt that we cannot possibly handle.
That's right.
And it's you. And actually, there was an email leaked to WikiLeaks that showed that how this is really operated, and it is basically operated through that the EU member states would block the IMF loan if we would not agree to the ISAFE bailout, and obviously, it was during the time when the British had actually passed a terrorist law or terrorist act on Iceland. And bear in mind, we're 317,000. We don't have a military or army, and we have never had an aggression on another nation. So they just basically used their leverage that they are so huge to treat us like, a colony nation or something like that.
Well, yes, the anti-terror laws that were invoked by Gordon Brown, he did vast reputational damage to Iceland, and therefore Iceland, in my opinion, should be suing Gordon Brown for at least $5 or $6 billion in damages, if not double or triple those damages. I think Iceland could turn this around and actually make money on the mistakes that Gordon Brown clearly made. He jumped too soon with all of his policies demanding repatriation of money. This was clearly going outside of the scope of his purview as prime minister, and he's the crux of this problem, and he should be probably having the British people pay Icelanders at least double or triple the damage. Now let's talk about the population of Iceland itself, paying the debts of a handful of private bankers who were given free rein. And their encouragement by London, encouraged by Brown, encouraged by Darling. Now, I was in London at the time this was all happening, and the Icelandic bankers were hailed as mythical bankers conquering the world. Now, where are some of these bankers now? Aren't they actually hiding in London?
They actually are, and there's actually been, their houses have been splattered with red paint throughout a whole year. Every week or a month, their houses are splattered with paint here in Iceland.
In Reykjavik, that's right. The bankers' houses are splattered with red paint. So, in other words, Brown is very high-minded in his attempt to fight so-called terrorism around the world, but when it comes to fighting financial terrorism in London, he's doing nothing.
Exactly, and these people that are the owners of the banks, especially the owners of Icesafe, they still live their luxury lives. And what has puzzled me is that why haven't their assets been frozen yet? I just don't. Nobody here in Iceland understands it. But we are actually offered, the Brits and the Dutch, to do everything we could to help them track down the money that had been stolen by these people and track them down, but they, obviously are not interested because they haven't done anything. They rather just go into the pockets of Icelandic taxpayers and get the money from there.
Right, and hence the insurrection. Okay, so what exactly does the bill that goes to referendum actually say? What are the citizens voting on?
Well, there was actually a bill passed this summer with there were some corrections made to it because it was awful the way it was presented. And actually the government in Iceland has been acting really strangely because they have been hiding information. They weren't actually going to let the members of parliament see the contract that we were supposed to be signing on a huge bailout for. But it was leaked, thank God to the people that have been leaking information for us. So we managed to make some really important changes to the contract, and the main change was perhaps that we would never pay more interest than a certain amount of our GDP. So let's say that we were back in financial crunch, we would not pay more than we could handle. And this could actually set an example for other nations that are dealing with just paying interest of foreign loans. And I think that's why they totally refused to take that into the new contract. However, personally, I don't believe that we should pay anything because it has not been concluded if it is legal, if we should legally be responsible for this according to the EU regulations.
Absolutely. There's no legal basis for it. I agree with you. There should not be any payments made. And I agree with you that the IMF is really a force of colonialization more than anything else. They've made countries bankrupt rather than help countries improve their economies. Now, the referendum is expected to be voted on February 20th. How do you expect the vote to go?
I think, well, that's why I'm calling on the people of the world to support us, the people of Iceland, to vote out of courage but not fear, because the government is really, it's like they're acting for the British and the Dutch. And I don't know what's behind it. I mean, maybe they have information that the rest of us don't have. But I have been through all the so-called secret files and the secret map that the parliamentarians were giving access to one by one. And there is nothing in it that could indicate a doomsday if we just stand on our feet and say no. So I think that maybe, I firmly believe that the nation will vote out of courage, especially like the way the things are going now. All these people are stepping forward, economists, politicians, ordinary people standing up for us, the nation.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. The population, might they waver really under the verbal threats of London and Amsterdam? Plus, remember the media propaganda. We've heard guys, for example, Jeremy Paxman in London, really put out the corporate line, the banking line, an apologist for the bankers in the city of London. And he's got a huge soapbox over there at his newscast. And is this going to have any effect on the local population, or will they see through the propaganda of people like Jeremy Paxman and vote in their own interests?
I don't think so, because there was a backlash. The government, the day the president decided to stand with his nation, not the bankers, it looked like they had won the propaganda war, the government, because immediately you got all the main media basically saying Icelanders are not going to pay, they're just like pirates in the North Atlantic and so forth. However, this is not entirely true, because if we refuse the new contract, the other contract is still standing. So this is a complete lies. What happened then, like maybe 2 days later, everything turned around, and now there is much more, like, in the British media, 90% of people voting, if Icelanders should pay, say no.
All right, well, this is a real Tea Party moment, as it's known around the world. Now, when the government that presided over the financial bubble and collapse was swept from power, what did the new government, led by Joanna Sigurdarson, I believe, I'm mispronouncing that, promise would be done? Was she expected to give away your economic sovereignty, as was done in this bill?
No, and it's become like a huge shock to us that have been waiting for a left-wing government for a long time. However, you have to bear in mind, I think it is sort of left and right is completely redundant at times like this, and we should rather focus on the job ahead instead of focusing on left and right policies. You cannot run a left welfare system policy with the IMF ruling the country. It is just a fairy tale, and they can't do it no matter how much they want to.
All right. Well, I support the effort in Iceland to insurrect against the occupying banking forces in that country. I only wish Americans had the same spine to do so in their own country, but maybe they'll be inspired by your country.
You know, if we can do it, you surely can. And I hope that it will be an inspiration for other